Welcome to the selfgrowth.com show. My name is David Riklan, and I'm the founder of selfgrowth.com. Today's show is about healing. Today, we'll be discussing holistic healing, energy healing, and vibrational healing. To help us understand these topics, I'm excited to interview Joy Gardner. I'd recommend you get something to write with and write on. There's going to be a lot of information shared today. I want to start by taking a minute and share some of Joy's background. Joy is the founder and director and primary instructor for the RMA Mystery School, which we'll be talking about today. She's been on the leading edge of holistic healing and energy healing since the early 70s for almost 50 years. She's written no less than 15 books on holistic and vibrational healing. She's a world authority on the chakras and on healing with light, colors, sound, crystals, and aromatherapy. But her work goes much deeper than that. It actually focuses on the underlying emotional cause of disease, and her certification program is designed to teach students how to heal the subconscious and dredge up and transmute the deep underlying causes of illness in themselves, their families, and their clients. Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Glad to be here.
All right, I'm very excited. I want to just jump right in today with you. We're talking about healing. I mentioned vibrational healing, energy healing, and holistic healing. Can you explain what these are and why they're so important?
Yes, I'd love to do that. I want to do it by actually explaining how they've showed up in my own life over the years. As you mentioned, I've been doing this for almost 50 years now. I'm 75 now. And I just want to get one thing out of the way before I get going here. In the beginning of my classes, I teach the RMA Mystery School, which I'll tell you about later. But in the beginning, when people are just meeting each other, I have them share something that they feel really vulnerable about. Because I find that if people are willing to share really honestly, to be authentic from their lives and reveal something that they're a little reluctant to reveal, they open up to each other a lot more quickly. And I want to share something very vulnerable about myself right now. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had an infected implant tooth removed.
Right.
It was a big deal. And so now there's this gap in my smile and I feel a little self-conscious about it. So there it is. So okay. I just want to get that out of the way to start with, and then I won't have to think about it anymore. So what if you see my gap in my mouth? Okay.
It's all good.
All right, great. Now, in the beginning, there was only one form of medicine. In the beginning was when I was a kid. Back in those days, you went to see the doctor and you did whatever the doctor told you to do. And we didn't even have a word for it then, but in retrospect, we call that allopathic medicine,
right.
The kind of Western medicine that is based on a Newtonian model, being that thinking about the body as being kind of like an automobile that has parts that wear down and need to be replaced or need to be dealt with somehow. It's a very mechanistic way of looking at the body. And so it was the cut, burn, and poison, basically, or the methods still are basically for dealing with most illnesses. Then things started to change, and we started to bring in other forms of medicine. In my own case, I was in my early 20s when I developed a cyst on my ovary. I'd never had an operation. I was in good health, and I didn't really, the doctor said it would have to be surgically removed. In other words, I'd need an operation.
Yeah, that must have been scary. Yep.
Yeah. So I'd never had an operation, didn't want to start. I thought to myself, okay, I'll do that if I have to, but I'm going to try everything else first, see what I can. So I went to the library and I looked in this huge library for anything about, we didn't even have the term alternative medicine back then. I looked for anything about healing female problems. That was about as close a
Right.
category as I could get to it. And from a nutritional point, from an herbal point, from an Eastern medicine point, from a Roman and Greek medicine point. I got every book I could find that possibly touched on it. And every book where I could hold them in my arms. There were that few books on that kind of topic at the time. And I took them home and I read them, and I came up with a program for myself that involved herbs and fasting and paying attention to my dreams. And that was the main gist of it. I did these things for a couple of weeks, and lo and behold, I went back to the doctor, and he said, "You don't have a cyst on your ovary. It must have been a misdiagnosis."
Wow. That's amazing that quickly.
Yeah, yeah. So I was thrilled. I mean,
Of course.
that was the beginning of everything changing in my life. I knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have any aspirations at that time to become a healer. In fact, at that point, I thought, wow, this is so exciting. I want to devote my writing skills to writing books where I could bring together an acupuncturist, a nutritionist,
Mhm.
people with different skills, and put all their different remedies there so they can do like I did, and choose what they want. That didn't happen. I became an herbalist, though. I learned a great deal about herbs. I later became an acupuncturist and learned a lot about that. And I started writing. I actually ended up writing the first medicinal herbal in North America in modern times, a book called Healing Yourself. And I think that was published first in 1972. So that went on to sell over 100,000 copies. Bantam found out about it, and then they published one of my books. And from there, however, a number of years later, the cyst came back. And I understood that even when they're surgically removed, they do sometimes come
Right.
back. Around that time, now I've been meditating since I was 12. And around this time, I got a message in my meditation. I call it guidance. And I was told that I was going to be doing spiritual healing. I wasn't happy about that. I'd put so many years, 5 at least, into learning about herbs and acupuncture.
Right.
And now I'm going to start all over to do some whole other thing. I didn't want to do that. But, when I get guidance, I follow it. And, but I didn't know how am I going to learn how to be a spiritual teacher, spiritual healer. And then about 6 months later, I met a woman named Helena Ram in Seattle. And she did something she called spiritual journeys. It's a really interesting method of you take a person, take them into a trance, and then you tell them that they are on their path. And that gives them a suggestion, and suddenly they see themselves on this path. And it's like a waking dream. But
Mm-hmm.
the difference between that and a dream is that the person leading you will periodically say, "Oh, I'm coming up to a castle," you might say. And then the person leading you say, "Well, talk to the castle and ask it, what is its message for you?" So it's an ongoing interpretation while the subconscious is bringing all kinds of interesting images for you to look at. But in my case, when she tried to take me into a trance, I couldn't completely relax. And the reason why was because the cyst on my ovary was hurting me. So instead of taking me on the spiritual journey, she took me on a journey with my body. And she said, I was already in an altered space. And she said, and I knew I had the cyst. So she said, "Okay, who put that there?" And I kind of went pretty quickly, and an answer just popped into my head: my mother. And then she said, "And what is its function?" And then I saw a scene in my head. I saw a scene where with my mom, and we were going to go out, and I was dressed pretty sexy. And
Okay.
and so she says to me, "You look like a whore. What's wrong with you?" Okay. So then I saw myself as this young woman taking my sexual energy and sucking it up and sticking it in my ovary.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was staggering for me. So then she said, okay, do you want it to stay there? And I said, no. And she said, okay, take it out. And then I saw myself pulling that energy out of my ovary, it was like a rag rope, really, really long rag rope, pulling it out of me, out of my ovary. And then when I finished, she said, okay, put it in your burlap bag. And then later she said, okay, take your burlap bag and toss it into the violet light. It's the light of transformation. And I did that. And David, the pain was gone from my ovary.
I mean, that quickly.
Immediately. As soon as I did that process, it was gone. So I knew that I was onto something. And shortly after that, I learned how to do that technique. And then I began teaching it. Now, the interesting thing here, I don't know if you're familiar with Bruce Lipton.
Yes.
Okay.
Somewhat.
So he's a biologist.
Mm-hmm.
And he is involved with something called epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
And when he likes to talk about how when he was a young man, just beginning to study biology, his mentor said to him, Bruce, if you have a cell that you're working with in the Petri dish and looking at it under the microscope, and that cell isn't doing well, don't mess with the cell. Change the environment. Okay?
Right.
This I think about that all the time because that's what we're doing. Now, this is what holistic healing is all about. Holistic healing, and it's usually spelled H-O-L, but I like to spell it W-H-O-L.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Holistic healing is about looking at the whole environment and how it impacts you. So if the cyst is bothering me, it's in this case, it had to do with my mental and emotional environment that went all the way back into my childhood and how that impacted my body. It could have gone into a past life. It could have gone all kinds of different places. But in this case, it went into my childhood. It was part of my environment. As I cleaned up that part of my environment, the body took care of itself. The body does not exist in isolation. It's just one aspect of our reality. And so as we clean up the whole body and mind, emotions, and spirit, then the body doesn't need to hold on to these illnesses anymore. It can just let go of them. So that's what holistic is about. Now, vibrational healing is a term that I was one of the two people who originated, to the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge. I'll tell you the story. I had been into crystal healing. I had been into sound healing. I had studied with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and become a hospice worker, and I did emotional release work. And I also was learning about the chakras. That's a whole story in itself. But anyway, I did all these different things. And then the main thing I was best known for at that time was crystal healing. It was very popular for a while, really popular, because the actress Shirley MacLaine.
Right. Yeah, I remember.
She got
really about a lot and swore by it. And
exactly. And she made these great movies and wrote these great books. Everybody was into crystals. All kinds of metaphysical bookstores opened up. And so it was easy to teach about crystals and get good crowds for that. But it was a Hollywood fad, and Hollywood fads come and go. And suddenly it went. Shirley wasn't very popular anymore. People weren't coming to crystal classes anymore. So I'm having this kind of dilemma. What am I going to do? And so I locked myself up in my room for 3 days and 3 nights. I did come to use the bathroom, but and I didn't eat. And I just meditated and pondered. And the only thing that happened was that this phrase kept coming into my head. It was vibrational healing. I'd never heard of it before. But the more I thought about it, I thought, that might be a really good umbrella term for all these different weird things that I do. And so when I came out, I went to the bookstore, and sitting on the table of newly released books, there was a book called Vibrational Medicine by Dr. Richard Gerber. And look, pick up this book, and I'm leafing through it. And I'm absolutely astonished because this man is describing the work that I do with the chakras, with the crystals, with sound, with aromatherapy. He's talking about all of it, and he's explaining what it is and why it works.
Right. And you never heard of him before you picked up the book?
Nope, no, his book had just come out, and I'd never heard of him. It was a synchronicity. The universe was telling me, yes, this is what we want you to do, so that was very exciting. Yeah. So that's kind of what vibrational healing is about. Then more recently, the term energy healing has become very popular.
Yes.
And that includes everything that we do in vibrational healing, and things like EFT tapping, things like homeopathy, things like touch for health, various forms of touch therapies. And so it's even an even bigger umbrella. So,
okay.
Does that kind of explain it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right. So you gave me a really good overview. I think you gave all of us kind of holistic healing, vibrational healing, energy healing. And I get a good sense. What I find interesting about this is if you look at how things have changed from the 70s, a lot of things back then, at the time in the 70s, I'm thinking meditation was very early on, obviously in the United States in terms of culturally. Yeah. And you take a look at where like breathing exercise, meditation, where these things have gone from the 70s, where they're a lot more mainstream and there's a lot more science to back up a lot of these. Back in the 70s, a lot of these things were questioned. Most people weren't using them. Doctors weren't using them. But now a lot of them has become mainstream, and there's been a lot of science behind it that's been added behind it.
Right.
It's interesting to me to see the changes, and we'll see what happens as we continue to change over the course of the years, because we're going to get more data and more information about what's working, what isn't working. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was this RMA Mystery School that you have. Right. Can you tell us, so what exactly is the RMA Mystery School?
Right. So RMA stands for Rejuvenation, Manifestation, and Ascension. So for 30 years, I was teaching the Vibrational Healing Certification Program. And then I started learning about Ascension. And I come to find out that all of the things that people do to prepare themselves for ascension were virtually identical to all of the things that I was teaching about in the Vibrational Healing Certification Program. So I combined, also, once again, I went into meditation and got the message that I should teach the RMA Mystery School. It was a little ironic because I barely knew what ascension was, and I certainly didn't know what a mystery school was. I didn't know then that I had been a high priestess in a mystery school in Egypt a long time before, and in Atlantis before that. But at the moment, I just knew that I was being told I was supposed to teach a mystery school. Well, I came to find out that a mystery school is about teaching. It's less about teaching really than it is about experiencing. And it's an opportunity for people to go very deep inside themselves and to transform themselves, to become the highest being that they can, to fulfill their potential to the very best of their ability. And so I teach all of these vibrational healing tools as one way of doing that. And then there are a lot of other tools that are added in as well.
All right. So RMA Mystery School, who would typically be going? Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Why would someone want to become a member? Where is it held? Share some of the details of that.
Okay. So there's a 3-year school. The first year is the certification program. And so people can just take the first year and become certified vibrational energy coaches. And now that actually appeals to a lot of different people. People who are in the healing professions really enjoy this as adding more tools into their toolkit. And then, but then there's a hairdresser who really loves it as a way of getting to know herself better and having something to share with her customers. And the same with, I've had many different kinds of teachers who have found that the tools of the mystery school are really helpful for them sharing with their students. Even a realtor who's found a whole different way of reaching her clients with some little exercises that help them to get in touch with what they really want in the way of a house instead of kind of what they think they ought to want. So it has many broad applications.
All right. So really kind of taking a big picture at it, you're looking at almost two audiences. One are people that are already practitioners, they're already working with people, and they want to expand, and they want to develop additional skills. They want skills that they can apply and continue to get better at what they're doing. And then you're finding there's a lot of people outside that arena that want to get into it and learn these skills so they can either work with the people in their current business or just work on themselves or just work with people they know.
Yes, and also there is the possibility of becoming a vibrational energy coach, which is, creating a whole new career for yourself that is really in the vanguard of healing professions, because it's based on energy medicine. Which goes back to quantum physics, and it's definitely the medicine of the future. This is what people want. They don't want invasive medicine except as a backup. And it's right. The heavy guns are there to use if they absolutely need them. But there's such gentle ways of healing the body. And this is a profession that really allows people to do something that they love doing, something that's different absolutely every time with every single person you see. Sure. And it's incredibly rewarding, both for the people receiving it and for the people giving it.
All right. Next thing I want to do is take a couple of minutes. You cover a lot of material in your program, and I know you break it up into workshops, like 12 major sections or areas of workshops that you teach. Can you give us a rundown of what those areas are and what you cover as part of this Vibrational Energy Coach certification program?
Sure. So I talk about there being 21 modalities that I teach, and I want to kind of run you through those.
Sure.
Within those 21 modalities, there are 14 workshops. 12 of them I teach in the first year. So the first one is crystals, aromatherapy, and color, and the chakras. Mm-hmm. Now, there's so much information covered there. I kind of need to cover them all at the same time, but there's so much information covered there that I have created a series of videos, and these are available on my website. It's called Crystals and Aromatherapy. And this series of videos, it's 9 hours of information. And I didn't think at first I was going to be able to teach about crystals and aromatherapy on a video, but I am able to show lots of wonderful pictures of crystals so you get really familiar with them. Mm-hmm. And then I recommend that people start out getting at least 7 of the 18 different aromatherapy oils that I use. And so it's, you can get a very basic crystal kit with about 12 crystals and about 12 oils, and then you can follow along with these videos very nicely. And so that's one way that I teach it, is with the videos that are on my website. But the other way is in person. So first of all, I should explain that this whole school is an internet school. We do once a week, we do webinars, and the webinars are about 2 hours long. And so we do that for a number of months, and then people actually come to Hawaii, to the Big Island where I am, and they come here for 11 days. And the things that I really can't teach on the video online, we get to teach when they're here in person. And so we'll do that crystal workshop again, crystals and aromatherapy workshop again when they're here in person, but it'll be a lot easier for them to grasp all the knowledge because they've already been prepared by the videos. But for people who can't come here or can't do the whole program, that series of videos is extremely useful. Okay, so that's the first one.
Let me just jump in. One quick question. Let me just jump in. So every week are you the primary instructor? You said these webinars every week, roughly 2 hours. So every week people are getting an opportunity to work with you for literally 2 hours,
exactly.
plus the online videos that you've created, plus the live workshop.
Yes, plus once you sign up for the school, you get a half an hour per month of time with me. So people can check in with me. They can use that time for personal healing or for talking about their clients or anything they want to talk with me about.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's jump back in.
So the first one is crystals and aromatherapy. And then I teach trance induction. And this is really important for a number of the other things that we do with visualization. And at the same time, I have people create a manifestation recording, which is a really good way of, you take the visualization of where you want to be in the future and elaborate it in the recording. First, you get yourself into a trance, and then you elaborate your vision for your future. And then you bring yourself out of the trance, and you do all this on a recording, and it's really effective for manifestation. So that's a second workshop. A third one is core belief reprogramming. Now, we all have beliefs from our childhood that go round and round in our head. And a lot of times we're aware of them and we want to change them, and we have every intention of changing them, but no matter how much we try, they still a little bit hang on.
Yeah, they're part of us.
Yeah. Well, this is a brilliant method for working with the subconscious. It's a very gentle method, and it takes the premise that there's a part of your subconscious that buys into these old dysfunctional core beliefs. And that part really thinks that holding on to those beliefs is going to help you. And it doesn't want to hurt you. It really wants to help you. But this is a very gentle way of talking to and working with that part of the subconscious. So it begins to realize that, hey, this person's grown up now, and those ideas aren't really being helpful to her anymore. And so it begins to loosen its hold on those old ideas. And now we present it with some new ideas that genuinely are going to be able to help this person. And it takes on those new ideas and replaces the old ones with the new ones. And the whole process is really detailed. It takes a couple hours, but by the time I used it the first time when I had this belief that I could not comprehend science and math. If I just picked up a book about science or math, I'd get dizzy.
Right.
Well, yeah. Well, I used this method, and after that, I was reading about quantum physics. I was writing about it. I was able to translate it into terms that other people could understand. Like, I have one really popular book, which is called Crystals and Aromatherapy, A Journey Through the Chakras. And in that book, I talk about the history and the science and the culture and the use of sound and color and chakras and crystals and aromatherapy. And I go into the science of each of them. So I got over my science issue. I love it now.
Apparently.
Yeah.
By working through these core beliefs. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so now that another workshop is, I used to train, after I studied with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I helped to start a hospice, and I trained hospice volunteers. Well, another workshop is hospice training, where you learn active listening, learn to be a really good, compassionate listener, And I think this is the most important skill for being a good healer of any kind. Getting over the idea that you're going to fix people, getting over the idea that you play a really important role in their healing, and getting to understand that people are really capable of healing themselves if you can give them some good tools to do it with. And a big, big thing is being a good listener. Okay, then another one is cast of characters.
What's the next one?
It's cast of characters.
Cast of characters. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, with cast of characters, this is one I invented myself. And initially, I invented it because I had a client who wanted to do some visualization, but he said he couldn't visualize. So I said, well, do you dream? And he said, yeah. And you see things in your dreams? And he said, yeah. Okay. So then I said, all right, let's do this. Imagine that your mind was a person. And he was able to do that. And then imagine that your body was a person, and he could do that. And imagine that your heart was a person, and imagine that your intuition was a person. Okay, so you take these 4 or 5 people, and you have them sit at a round table and talk about some issue that you're dealing with. And you're going to find out most times that at least one of the people in your cast of characters is not a good team player, is not functioning very well. It's often the mind, because the mind in Western society is accustomed to being in charge and not being very respectful toward the intuition or the emotions. So then you can replace that character and bring in a different mind character who's more of a team player, for example. And it's amazing the difference that can make in helping a person to be more functional in their life, where they're not struggling against themselves all the time, but they actually have a functional group of players within themselves that support each other. So it's a very powerful, very simple, but really powerful technique. By the way, when I teach each of these workshops where I'm teaching a specific technique, there's a 4-week period that I teach a specific technique. So let's not say we're doing cast of characters. The first week, I demonstrate on one of the students.
Right.
The second week, students go off, they pair off with each other, and one person will do that method on one person, and then the third week, they trade off, and the person who gave is now receiving. The fourth week, everybody comes back, and we talk about what happened when they went off. Very effective method of healing.
Well, it gives them a full month to really incorporate it into who they are and get to know it. So it's
exactly
almost the different levels of learning. So you're learning your time, then you're doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then they get to know each other too. And that's a wonderful thing. And then when they're in the middle of all this, then they also use their client feedback forms. That part of the certification program is that you have to perform a certain number of each of these modalities on a certain number of people. And you start by performing it on one of your classmates in the...
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Then another one is past life regressions. Very fascinating. And another one is something called progressed cellular consciousness. And in that, I actually take people on a journey inside of their physical body. And this is especially good for people who have chronic ailments, things that have been holding on for a long time. They not only can go inside their body, most people can do this, by the way, and actually see what's going on, to see the walls of their organs, to talk to different parts of their body, to find out what the body needs. But they can also, there's another workshop called Progressed Cellular Consciousness, where I can actually take them back to the first significant event in the progression of, for example, their diabetes, and what incidents happened that in that case often had to do with being deprived of the sweetness of life. And they'll see one incident after another where they experienced some form of deprivation of the sweetness of life. And by the time they've done that, they have such an insight into how they allowed this illness to take place in their body. And they're much better able to perhaps go through some emotional release work or some other kind of work to move the sickness out of their body. Okay, then they come to Hawaii. And again, we do the crystals and aromatherapy, and we also do the emotional release work. And this is based on my work with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, where people get in touch with the emotions that they've been repressing, especially the anger, and there are safe ways to release that anger. And we also do, let's see, oh yeah, we do toning. We do a full day of sound healing and toning. And then finally, the main workshop is called Vibrational Alignment. And this is where you feel the spin of energy at the chakras. I find almost everybody who studies with me is able to do that, to feel the spin of energy at the chakras and to feel which chakras are weak and which ones are strong, which ones are out of balance one way or another. And that's when we bring in the crystals and the essential oils, and we talk. We talk with them to find out a greater understanding about what is causing the energy to be blocked so that it doesn't move freely through the chakras. So you can tell this is a very, very thorough program. And it's not a 6-month program, it's an 11-month program. And by the time people are done, they feel quite confident in their abilities, and they have really learned how to do it very well. And then if they want to continue in phase 2, which is year 2, they can go on for greater personal development. We'll get into another couple of workshops. One is releasing earthbound spirits, having to do with depossession. That often shows up as a problem when you do this kind of deep work. And also life between lives, where people get to just extraordinary experience of getting to experience dying and then going someplace else and meeting their guides and meeting their soul family and deciding about what their next life is going to be, what they're going to do in their next life, what contracts they're going to make. So all of this is just goes on for deeper and deeper levels of personal awareness and deeper levels that a person can take their client into if they choose to.
What's interesting, a few things I want to mention. What's interesting about your program is you go in great depth about a wide range of healing modalities, and you really step people through, because as you know, there's one thing to read about it, there's another thing to learn about it and even study it. It's a whole nother thing to incorporate into who you are, to practice it, and you're really taking people through this, and you're doing it month by month. And I like the fact that you're really giving a part of yourself, because what's happening is people have an opportunity to work with you literally in the class every week, in the workshop every week, and then they get one-on-one time with you. So for anybody who really understands the value of these type of healing practices, this is a great opportunity for them to work with someone who's been living this and working with people, as you mentioned, almost 50 years. So right now, we're going to go into a few other things with you, but I want to just take a quick break. We mentioned the website earlier, but if someone wanted to get more information, they wanted to talk to you, they wanted to find out in depth, how would they find you? What's your website, and what would they do when they get there?
Okay, www.rmamysteryschool.com.
Okay, so RMA, which you mentioned earlier, rmamysteryschool.com. And go there. And when they get to the site, what should they look at the site?
Okay, right at the first page, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a place to sign up so that you can get more information. And there's a series of short videos that I've made that as really an introduction to my teaching style and the kinds of things that I teach about. They're a lot of fun. And there's also a free ebook that you can get. So that's the best entry into the work. And then if you do find that this is something that excites you and you'd like to explore it further, you can, when you will receive an email, and it will tell you exactly how you can get the ball rolling and sign up to actually have a meeting with me, and we can get to know each other and see if it's a good fit for the mystery school.
All right. Are there any other details you want to share about the program itself, how you pick those modalities, anything else you want to share about it? I want to cover a couple of other things that you do as well, but before we jump in, anything else you want to share?
Well, actually, I do want to mention that I'm also on Facebook, and you can go to look for RMA Mystery School on Facebook. Yeah.
All right. And if someone wants to find out the investment and the details, should they go to the website? How should they find
Yeah.
out?
David, I don't keep it a secret. I'm perfectly happy to talk about what it costs. Normally, I charge $250 a month, and I don't need it in advance. People just pay at the end of the month for the next month. And in order to start in the very beginning, I do want them all to get the recordings for the crystals and aromatherapy, which is also $250. And the other requirement for the school is that they read my book, Vibrational Healing Through the Chakras. And that's a really, really thorough book with something like 280 references. And it's used not only as a textbook for my workshops and mystery school, but also a lot of people that teach about vibrational healing are using it as a textbook as well.
Okay.
So that's all that's required in the beginning. Now, the thing that's going on right now is a lot of people are urging me to record my classes. I love teaching them in person, but I can only take 10 students at a time. I don't like huge classes. I like to give individual attention to people.
Sure.
So they want me to record them, and I'm reaching the time in my life and thinking, well, yeah, that would be a good idea. And so I'm asking that the people that sign up this time are willing to be recorded. That means being willing to, you do let your personal stuff hang out a lot in these workshops, and that they would be willing to do that, to be recorded, not to broadcast on Facebook or anything public, but that other students in the future will be able to watch these recordings and really benefit from them. So it's a bit of a sacrifice, but it's also a great gift that you're giving to other people. Plus, it means that there's a reduction to 175 instead of 250.
Okay. All right. Which is a tremendous amount of value in terms of what you're providing. So we've been focusing on RMA Mystery School. So in addition to the Mystery School, what else do you offer? I know you do some other things as well.
Yeah, well, actually, I've kind of talked about it. There's the videos, the aromatherapy videos. It's all in my store on my website. And I see clients privately, and it's amazing that practically everything that I teach and do with my clients, I can actually do on I do it on Zoom, and like we're doing right now.
Right.
And I can I can even do the vibrational alignment work. I can feel the spin of energy at your chakras, even with you, where in New Jersey and me in Hawaii. I can feel the spin of energy at your chakras. It's really fascinating. And then if you have a few stones and a few oils, I can tell you which ones to use, and we can go from there. It really is effective, even long distance.
All right, sounds good. So we covered a lot of material today. Before we wrap up, any final words for our listeners today? Anybody who's interested, any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, I want to make sure that you do get the RMA is rejuvenation, manifestation, ascension. And so the rejuvenation is about really being healthy in your body so that as you age well. And that's, I knew things about aging when I was a little kid, but I knew I couldn't teach about it then. But now I can teach about it. I put it to the test, and I know some really wonderful things about aging in a healthy way. Then the manifestation is about creating the reality that you want. And I'm proud to say that I have created the house that I want, in the environment overlooking the ocean that I want, and the relationship that I want, and the school that I want, the work that I want. I'm very happy that I've been able to manifest in the world what I want. And I love teaching people how to do that. Okay, and the ascension, just I love to support people to be all that they can be. You know, my mom was very competitive with me, and she didn't know how to give me
Right.
that loving kind of support. And that's a big reason why I wanted to start a mystery school. You know, my mom was precognitive. She would have dreams where she see things that like that people were going to die or before they happened. And she also learned how to read palms from the gypsies in Poland. And but she got really scared of these gifts, and she prayed that they would be removed, and they were. And I just thought that was so sad. And I see so many people who have really special gifts, and I want to nurture those gifts. I want to help people to become all that they can be and to know what the heck to do with their strange abilities that they don't even want to tell anybody about, and to create a safe environment in the school where they can talk about these things and feel comfortable. And so that's what the RMA is about, and
Okay.
that's
It's a great message.
my mission. Okay, thank you
So
so much, David.
you're welcome. So it's really an opportunity to kind of work with you and work with the things that you've been doing for 50 years, literally for 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity. Joy, I want to thank you for sharing today. There's a lot of information. You shared a lot of details, not only on healing, but on your background. And I think one of the things that I want to point out is I've really gotten a chance, and I think our listeners have gotten a chance to know who you are and what you're about, and can get a sense whether you're a good fit. So if you're interested and get a feel for Joy, and you think she's someone who could, help you in this RMA process, which is an extraordinary process, go to her website, rmamysteryschool.com. Contact her. Sounds like you'll be happy to talk to people in some more detail about the program itself and anything else you're doing. So
Right.
once again, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank all our listeners for staying with us today. Make sure to check it out. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you, David.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye-bye.